I was the new one. That's how it always starts, I guess. Someone moves into an area where everyone already has a rhythm, already knows which houses creak, and which ones don't. My parents and I had just relocated to a quiet neighborhood in northern Pennsylvania, the kind of place where the streetlights came on early and stayed on all night, even when nothing ever seemed to happen. They left town 2 weeks after we moved in. A short trip, 3 nights. Enough time for me to realize how empty the house sounded without them. That's why I invited people over. I didn't know them well. Not really. Just the 3 neighbors closest to my age who had been polite enough to talk to me since we arrived. Mark lived 2 houses down. Jenna and Claire lived across the street together with Jenna's older sister, though she was almost never home. It wasn't meant to be a party. No loud music, no crowd. Just 4 bored teenagers with too much space and nowhere else to be. The house itself was bigger than it needed to be. Old, narrow, 3 floors if you counted the attic. The attic door was at the top of the staircase, a small square panel with a pull cord hanging down like it wanted attention. None of us mentioned it at first. We sat in the living room, talked about school, about the area, about nothing important. Someone put music on quietly. Someone else joked about how creepy old houses always look at night, and we all laughed because it felt expected. At some point, Claire asked if the attic was finished. I said no. That should have been the end of it. But Mark asked what was up there anyway. I told him the truth. Boxes, old furniture, stuff that came with the house. My parents hadn't gone through it yet. Jenna smiled in a way that made me uncomfortable, like she already knew the answer to a question she was about to ask. "Let's check it out," she said. I didn't want to, but I also didn't want to be the weird new kid who said no to everything. So I pulled the cord and let the ladder fall. The attic light didn't turn on right away. It flickered, then steadied. The space was unfinished, low ceiling, exposed beams. There was a narrow path between stacks of boxes, like someone had been careful not to block movement completely. Mark went up first, then Jenna. Claire hesitated, then followed. I went last. It smelled dry, not dusty exactly, just air that had been sitting still for a long time. Nothing happened at first. We joked, opened boxes, found old clothes, broken lamps, photo albums that weren't ours. Mark made fun of a cracked mirror leaning against the far wall. Claire said the floor felt uneven, like it dipped slightly in the center. Jenna stood near the ladder, quiet. She asked if anyone else felt like the room was smaller than it should be. Mark laughed it off. I didn't, because I had been thinking the same thing, but hadn't wanted to say it. After about 20 minutes, we went back downstairs. The attic stopped being interesting once it didn't offer anything obvious. The ladder went back up. The door closed. That's when things shifted. The music downstairs started cutting out, just for a second at a time. Enough to notice. Enough to make the silence between songs feel longer than it should. Then we heard footsteps. Above us, slow, measured. 4 of them froze at the same time. I said it was probably the house settling. Mark nodded, a little too fast. Jenna didn't say anything. Claire asked if my parents had pets. I said no. The footsteps stopped. We waited. Nothing else happened. Eventually, Mark joked again, louder this time, and the tension broke just enough for us to move on. We ordered food, ate, laughed again, though it sounded thinner now. Around midnight, Jenna excused herself to use the bathroom. She didn't come back. At first, we thought she was on her phone. Then Claire went to check. The bathroom was empty. The back door was still locked. The front door, too. We called her name. Nothing. That's when we heard the attic ladder. It didn't crash down. It lowered slowly, 1 rung at a time. Mark backed away from the staircase. Claire whispered that this wasn't funny anymore. I stood there, staring up at the dark square above us, trying to decide whether I was supposed to do something or pretend this wasn't happening. Jenna's voice came from above. She sounded calm. She said our names. Not all at once. One at a time, like she was counting. Mark yelled back, demanding she stop messing around. There was a pause. Then she laughed. Not loud, not manic, just amused. She said the attic felt different now. Bigger, like it had room to breathe. Claire started crying. That's when Mark ran. He bolted for the front door, fumbled with the lock, and pulled it open. He stopped in the doorway. He turned back toward us and said very quietly, "Why is she standing behind you?" I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. I could feel the air shift. Something close enough to matter. Claire screamed. The lights went out. When they came back on, I was alone. The ladder was up. The door was closed. No sign of Mark. No sign of Jenna. No sign of Claire. The police came. Asked questions. Searched the house. The attic. They found nothing. No signs of a struggle. No hidden space. No way 3 people could disappear without leaving something behind. They asked me the same questions over and over. I gave the same answers. Months passed. I stayed. The house stayed quiet. Too quiet. Until one night, while lying in bed, I heard footsteps above me again. 4 of them. Slow. Measured. Stopping directly over my room. And then I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to think before. None of us ever actually saw Jenna go back upstairs. We just assumed she did. Sometimes when I'm awake late enough, I hear voices in the attic. Not whispering, talking, laughing, arguing about nothing important. And the worst part is this. I can't remember what Jenna looked like anymore. But I remember exactly where I was standing when Mark asked that question. And sometimes when the house feels too full for just one person, I wonder the attic didn't take them at all. I wonder if it simply gave them somewhere else to stand.
I never planned to go into the attic that night. The house was quiet in the way suburban houses get after midnight. Not silence exactly, just the soft hum of electricity, the refrigerator cycling on and off, the distant sound of a car passing somewhere far enough away that it didn't feel like it belonged to me. I had lived there for a little over a year, a narrow 2-story place in upstate New York. Old, but not charming old, just used. The kind of house that had seen other families and never fully let them go. The attic wasn't finished. No drywall, just exposed beams, old insulation, and the single pull-down ladder in the hallway ceiling. I had never been up there. I didn't need to be. There was nothing I owned that needed storage, and the previous owner had cleared everything out before the sale. At least, that's what I was told. The reason I noticed the attic was the sound. It started as something I could explain away. A soft thump, maybe once or twice a week. I assumed it was the house settling, old wood expanding and contracting. Everyone says that's normal. But after a while, it became rhythmic. Not constant, not loud, just deliberate. 3 slow taps. Pause, then one more. It always happened between 12:30 and 1 a.m. I work late. I'm usually awake around that time, sitting on the couch with the TV on low, scrolling on my phone. The first few times, I muted the TV and listened, trying to locate the source. The sound came from above me, directly above the hallway, right where the attic was. Still, I didn't panic. I didn't even feel afraid. My brain did what brains do. It searched for the most boring explanation. Animals, raccoons, maybe squirrels. But animals don't follow patterns, and they don't stop when you stand directly under them. The night I finally decided to check was the night the pattern changed. That night, there were only 2 taps, then nothing. No third, no pause, no final knock. I waited, standing in the hallway staring up at the square outline of the attic door like it might blink back at me. 5 minutes passed. Then slowly, something dragged across the floor above my head. Not scurrying, not scratching, dragging. Like something heavy being pulled a short distance, then dropped. I didn't call anyone. I didn't grab a weapon. I didn't do any of the things people say you should do in hindsight. I stood there longer than I should have, listening, trying to decide if I was imagining it. Eventually, the sound stopped. That should have been enough to make me go to bed and forget about it. Instead, I pulled the ladder down. The hinges squealed louder than I expected. I remember wincing, as if I didn't want whatever was up there to know I was coming. That thought didn't sit right with me, but by then, the ladder was already down. The attic smelled stale. Not rotten, just old dust and dry wood. The kind of smell that makes your nose itch. I climbed slowly, one rung at a time, holding my phone for light. The beam shook slightly with my hand, throwing shadows across the rafters. Nothing moved. The attic was smaller than I expected. Narrow, low ceiling. I couldn't stand fully upright. Insulation covered most of the floor, uneven and disturbed in places, like someone had walked through it and tried to smooth it back down afterward. That's when I noticed the footprints. They weren't fresh, no sharp edges, but they were clear enough. Impressions pressed into the insulation leading from one end of the attic to the other. They were barefoot, adult-sized. I stood there longer than I should have, trying to tell myself they were mine, that maybe I had been up there before and forgotten, that maybe the inspector had walked around during the home inspection. But inspectors wear boots, and I had never been up there. The footprints ended near the far wall, where the roof sloped down too low to crawl comfortably. That area was darker, the beam of my phone barely reaching it. I didn't want to go closer, but I did anyway. That's where I found the chair. It was an old wooden dining chair, placed upright, facing the attic opening. Not broken, not damaged, just placed there, centered, as if someone had sat in it and watched the ladder. I felt my chest tighten then. Not full fear, not yet. More like confusion mixed with the first hint of something being wrong in a way I couldn't explain. I checked the rest of the attic. No boxes, no trash, no signs of anyone living there. Just a chair and the footprints. I went back down and pulled the ladder up. I told myself I'd deal with it in the morning. That night, I barely slept. The next day, I called the realtor who sold me the house. She sounded surprised, but not alarmed. She told me the house was vacant for months before I bought it. No tenants, no squatters, no reported issues. When I asked about the chair, she paused longer than she should have. Then she said maybe it was left behind by the previous owners and overlooked during cleanup. That explanation didn't sit right with me, but I didn't have anything better. I tried to ignore it. For about a week, nothing happened. No sounds, no movement. I started to relax. I even laughed at myself once, thinking about how easily my imagination had gotten the better of me. Then the tapping came back. Not from the attic this time, from the hallway ceiling, directly above the ladder. 3 taps, pause, 1 tap. Then the sound I wasn't prepared for. Breathing, slow, controlled, close enough that the microphone distorted slightly. And then, very softly, something pressed against the attic door from above. Not hard, just enough to make the wood creak, as if someone were lying flat against it, listening. When I listened to the recording the next morning, there was one final sound before the audio cut off. A quiet scrape, and then my own voice from upstairs, saying my name. I moved out 2 days later. I didn't tell anyone why. The new owners never contacted me. But sometimes, late at night when my apartment is quiet, I catch myself listening for 3 taps. And I still don't know if the voice on that recording was something imitating me or something that had learned me well enough to try.